Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain 101. For those of you who are regular viewers of the channel, this is a new playlist that I created to help people out who are just getting started off into their financial journey, or perhaps people who just didn't grow up with that financial literacy. And so hopefully here we can help bridge that gap. Now, in today's episode, we're going to talk about debt. Now, this is a topic I'm extremely passionate about. I'm actually very upset with myself that I didn't get this video out last weekend. I'm about to go to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra right now in the afternoon, but I made a point to myself, I made a promise to myself that I would get this video out this weekend. It's something I'm very passionate about, a topic that I think more people should talk about and understand the nuances that go on with debt. So with that said, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. Leave a comment down below if there are other topics that you want me to cover. Anything to do with finances, whether it's your bills, how to invest, which is the goal of this channel, but just in general, right? How to organize your life around finances and what makes sense. Any questions you have, leave them down below in the comments and we'll make an episode about it. All right, with that said, let's jump into it. Now, in my experience, when it comes to debt, there are really four types of debt that most people tend to interact with on a daily basis or just throughout their life. And so the first one of those, what we're going to cover, is credit card debt. So let's start off with number one, credit card debt. When it comes to credit card debt, this is one that I feel unequivocally about, and that is you should not have it. End of story. Now, there is this rumor out there, this misnomer, this misconception that it is good for you to have credit card debt. In fact, I have had friends and family members actually believe that carrying a balance on their credit card is good for them. They think it's good to build their credit score. They think that paying that extra interest rate on top of that 15% interest on that debt is going to help them build a better credit score. This is idiotic. Listen to me. No credit card debt is ever good. And here's my rule when it comes to credit cards. Rule number one, if you cannot pay your entire credit card bill at the end of the month, you do not deserve to have a credit card. Okay, you have proven to not be able to handle this type of responsibility. Okay, now I know this is coming off harsh, but this is extremely important. Credit cards can ruin your life, and I don't want you to ruin your life. And so that's why I'm speaking a little sternly about this. If you cannot pay off your entire credit card at the end of the month, do not have a credit card. End of story. Cut it up, rip it up, throw it away. All right, cash is your best friend in that case. Now, if you are somebody who can pay off their credit cards at the end of every month responsibly, no late fees, no, oh, well, it's 2 days away, so, I'm going to do some magic math and I'll pay a little bit of interest, but it won't really be that big of a deal. No, that does not count. At the same time, when the bill's due is when you pay it. End of story. Okay, so if you're someone who can do that, great. Then my recommendation to you is to have one credit card. Only one. All this BS about points and things of that nature, forget about it. Listen, I'm all about the points. I always say, I'm a big Delta person. I love flying Delta. And so my credit card is Delta, and that's how I get my miles. But at the end of the day, no credit card, no X amount of credit cards is worth points. It's just not. Find one that resonates with you. Maybe you have big gas bills. Maybe you have big shopping bills whenever you go to the grocery store and you get cash back from those. That's where you spend your money. Maybe you travel a lot like I do. Maybe you prefer to have a Marriott or Hilton type rewards credit card or a Delta or Southwest type credit card. Go for it. But pick one and stick to that one. Only have one credit card. There's no benefit in you having multiple credit cards. There's none. The only thing that can do is lead you down a dangerous path. So if you are going to use credit cards, only use one and pay it off at the end of every single month. Now, for those of you who currently have credit card debt, listen, do not invest into your 401k. Do not add to your HSA. Do not do anything else. Do not have fun. Don't you dare eat out at any restaurants. Do not buy new shoes. Don't buy new clothes. You don't do anything until that credit card debt is gone. Okay, credit card debt will ruin your life. This is the worst type of credit, the worst type of debt that you can have. Please, I'm asking you, this is so important. You cannot survive credit card debt. No one can. You have to get rid of it immediately. okay, if not sooner. So that's the first debt I want to talk about. It's one I'm very passionate about. It's one that I think is a cancer on our society. It's a cancer on our financial status. So credit card debt, get rid of it. If you're going to have a credit card, have one, and make sure you pay off that bill at the end of every single month. There is nothing to carry over into the next month. Every month you're at $0 on credit card debt. Hopefully that came through. Hopefully that makes sense. So with that said, let's jump into debt number 2. So the second type of debt I want to talk about are car loans, car notes. Now, car loans, this is a touchy one because a lot of us, we need our vehicles to get from point A to point B, to get to our jobs, to take our kids to the soccer game, to drop them off at school, in order to go buy groceries, right? A vehicle, especially in the United States, it's very necessary, right? We have to have a vehicle to get from point A to point B. It's not like we're living in a city like Paris or London where we can just kind of walk everywhere. Some of us might live in Manhattan or Boston where that is the case, but the vast majority of people living in the United States need a vehicle to get from point A to point B. So I understand the need to have a vehicle. So I'm not telling you not to have a vehicle. A vehicle is a necessity, understood. But what is not okay is if your salary, if your annual income is, say, for example, $40,000 and your vehicle costs $35,000, that is not okay. That makes zero sense. It makes no sense for you to purchase an item that's going to depreciate in value that costs the equivalent of essentially 1 year's worth of you working. Think about all those hours you spend working, and keep in mind that's before taxes. So if you make $40,000 a year and your vehicle costs $35,000, in reality, you paid more for your vehicle than what you take home in a given year. All right, that's not okay. That's not okay. This is where, especially in the United States, we have a huge issue with financial literacy, and this is a perfect example of it. All right, that is just not balanced at all. Now, if you're in that situation, my recommendation for you is, as long as your car's in good condition, this is the best time to get rid of your vehicle. There are many of these online vehicle purchasers that will buy your vehicle from you at a higher price. Okay, better than Kelley Blue Book or anything of the nature. So right now, if you have a vehicle that you can't afford, this is the best time to get out of it without you getting burned. Now, once you've done that, once you've gotten rid of your vehicle, I get it, you still need a vehicle. Go buy something that you can pay for in cash. All right. I don't care if it's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. If it's $10,000, you can pay for it in cash. Do it. Go buy it and pay for it in cash and be done with it. Get rid of this debt. It makes no sense for you to have this. Now, if you are somebody who's not in that kind of drastic situation where your vehicle is essentially the same amount, if not more, than what you make in a given year, and you're halfway through or whatever through your car payment, you've made good headway. Well, then here is my plea to you. Pay it off in the next 18 months. Figure out what it takes, all right? Whether it's partly your tax return, you take that, you throw it on there. Whether it's your next bonus, you throw that onto it. Whether it's everybody deciding, okay, for the next 18 months, we're going to reel it in. We're not going to eat out. We're going to cook our meals here at the house. We're not going to go out drinking. We're not going to do anything like that. We're going to pay off this car. Because I'm telling you, once you pay off that vehicle, you're going to have this entire pressure and weight off your chest. You're going to have more income and you're going to have more ability to spend. So this is very important. Find a way, have a game plan for how you are going to finish off paying your vehicle. And let me tell you right now, these 72-month notes that people are getting, these 72-month loans, and now they're even higher, that's not your plan. All right. You should not be waiting the full length of the loan to pay it off. Now, if you already have 6 months left on that whole note, okay, that's a rare exception. But find a plan, pay it off aggressively as soon as possible. If your vehicle costs as much as you make in a year, get rid of it. All right, go to Carvana, see how much they'll pay for your vehicle. Get rid of that loan, buy something you can get done with in cash right now and be free and clear of that debt. These are very important steps that we must take in order to get to actually investing. All right, you have to get to essentially a ground zero, a ground floor of zero, a neutral balance place before you can actually start investing. So the first thing we're doing here is getting our house in order. All right, we started with the first episode here of figuring out where our money's going, creating a spreadsheet where we track all of our funds. Now we're getting a clear understanding of our debt. What's good debt? What's bad debt, right? What debt should I pay off now? What debt should I pay off later? And what must be paid off now and never happen again? So with that said, let's get into the debt type number 3, student loans. Student loans are a gray space, in my opinion. Now, I guess I should have said this at the beginning, none of this is financial advice. I'm just an engineer telling you what's worked for me and what I believe in, and the advice I would give to my kids. But with that said, let's talk about student loans. Now, if you are somebody who has 6 figures in student loans, this is a problem. You need to tackle that as aggressively and as fast as you can. Now, hopefully, if you're somebody who has a 6-figure student loan, that means that you also probably have a 6-figure plus salary. So it should be very simple for you to aggressively pay this down. Now, hopefully you don't have other types of debts, but we're going to keep this in the purview of student loans. Now, let's say you're somebody who has more student loans than what you make in a year. Well, again, this is something you're going to need to tackle aggressively. Now, the reason this is so important is because when you eventually decide to get married, or if you are married and you decide, I want to go buy a house or I want to make another big purchase, this is going to weigh on your ability to actually make these big lifetime decisions. All right, you want to start a family, you want to go buy a house, yet you're laden with $90,000 in student loan debt, and then a mortgage company, a lender, they go and they check your debt to income ratio, and all of a sudden this all starts to weigh on it. I mean, you don't want to be in that type of place. So if you have massive amounts of student loan, hopefully that's accompanied with an actual massive amount of a salary that you make every year. I'm thinking lawyers, engineers, doctors. Pay it down aggressively. All right. Now that you have graduated and you're making all this money, this is not the time to party. This is not the time to spend. It's not the time to act like you're a big time lawyer, a big time doctor, a big time engineer. You're wrong. All right. Now you are in the red. You're in the hole. And now it's time to get out of that hole and get back to black, right? Or in other words, neutral. And so the best way to do that is to take all of that money you're making and pile it into these student loans and get rid of it. Okay. Now, there is an exception to this rule, and where I call it kind of the gray space. Say you have, let's say, $7,000 to $10,000 in student loan debt. And let's say that you have a very low interest rate on it, like say 2%. And say that you're paying, just the bare minimum on it. Say it's $200 a month, for whatever it is. And it's really not making a big dent. It's not anything that's hurting you or killing you. That's the type of debt where I could say it might make more sense for you not to pay it down aggressively. And the reason is it might make more sense to take that money and invest it, or take that money and put it into your 401k or your HSA. It might, for the value of that money, it might make more sense for you to put it somewhere else so it can generate more of a return than you just paying down the student loan. And the reason why I kind of give this window, this, $7,000 to $10,000 or lower, right, is because $7,000 to $10,000, it's not going to be something that affects you from a credit perspective. It's not going to be something that affects you from a purchasing perspective. If you're buying a house and you want to get a mortgage, a $7,000 to $10,000 loan that you have out, it shouldn't weigh on what you're doing or your ability to purchase, right? It should be pretty minimal. And at such a low interest rate, assuming it's fixed, you can do a lot more with that money, right? You can invest it and have a much higher return on that money. So you really have to be nuanced with these. I love Dave Ramsey, and I think he helps so many people, and I think it's absolutely phenomenal what he does. But for a lot of people, his messaging is a little too black and white, and there's no nuance that goes into it. And so this is where I'm trying to add in a little nuance when it comes to the debt perspective, especially with student loans. Again, if you're in that lower amount, I don't think it's crucial for you to just aggressively pay it down. If you're in that extreme high camp, right, the 6 figures or, even 5-figure type debt, get rid of it. You got to get out of it. Right, that's going to have an impact on your life. It just is, right? Especially if you want to go and do other things or spend money in other ways. You don't want that hanging over your head for the next decade. Get rid of it. Smaller amounts, listen, if you have a bonus that comes in that can pay off your $2,000 or $3,000, do it. Just get rid of it, because why not? But other than that, it might make sense to put your money to better use and to work for you in better ways. So always take a nuanced approach when it comes to some of these debts. Credit card, there's no nuance to do with that, right? That's black and white. I'm 100% with Dave Ramsey on that. When it comes to your car loan, that one, again, I think is pretty black and white. If you have a car loan that's more than what you make in a year or anywhere near what you make in a year for your salary, you have a problem. Get rid of that as soon as possible, if not sooner. Now, with that said, let's tie this up with the last type of debt that most people tend to have, your mortgage. Now, when it comes to your mortgage, what I'm about to say here might be the most controversial compared to what you hear a lot of people on YouTube. And again, we all have to make our decisions for ourselves. This is just me telling you what I believe and the advice I would give my kids. So do your own homework, do your own research, think for yourself. Now, when it comes to a mortgage, first of all, make sure you are taking a mortgage that you can afford. You don't want to take on a mortgage where you're house poor, right? You don't want to have your mortgage payment being where your entire paycheck is going to. So make sure there's balance with that. And only you can really answer the question to that. Hopefully some of the other things we've done so far, such as getting rid of your debt and tracking all your spending, helps you with that understanding. But when it comes to your mortgage, I fundamentally believe that you should not pay it off aggressively. I do not think you should have a 15-year note. I think you should have a 30-year note. And I think as long as it's a low fixed interest rate, I don't think it makes sense to pay it off quickly. Let me explain. Now, when it comes to your mortgage, the reason real estate and property for people has been such a big way for people to get wealth in such short amounts of time and so quickly is because we're using leverage. It's what we're doing. We take a $100,000 house, we put, say, 20% down, so we put $20,000 down, and then next thing you know, it goes up to $150 in value, right? We just took $20,000 to make an extra $50,000. That's leverage. We're borrowing debt to use it as leverage. Now, obviously, we're borrowing debt so we can have a house where we can live in, but the truth is your investment is growing. So there's a disproportionality here. And so for that reason, I believe, especially right now in 2021, 2022, and really over the past 5 to 10 years, money has been so cheap. We're at historic lows when it comes to interest rates. And so if you have such a low interest rate and you can borrow for a mortgage this mass amount of money and let that work for you, why would I want to tie up any more capital into that when I can put it somewhere else to work for me and earn a greater return? Now, keep in mind, every time you put money into your house, paying your mortgage down, or if you try to, pay your mortgage more aggressively and you're putting more down towards the principal, all you're doing is locking those funds up into that house. Now, sure, maybe you knock off a couple months, maybe you knock off a couple of years, but guess what? All that money you put in there, it could have gotten a 10, 15, 20% return in the stock market. Right? It could have gotten a over 10% just in an S&P 500 index. And so really what you're doing is you're leaving money on the table. So I think as long as you're not house poor and you haven't put yourself into a bad situation when it comes to your mortgage, I don't think it makes sense to pay it off aggressively or take anything less than a 30-year mortgage. And the whole reason is just for this leverage game. All right? We want to put as little money down as possible so that we can, one, let our house appreciate, right, based off that little bit of money that we put down. But we also want to be able to take all of our other money and invest it into securities that will hopefully return a higher yield, right, a higher growth rate than what we would have within our house. Now, this is, I know, very controversial because people talk about paying down your house aggressively and things of that nature. Listen, I get it. It makes sense from a maybe 1990s, 2000, Great Recession type era, the 2008, right? People always want to now talk about paying down your house as quickly as possible. People are scared of, the next time the housing market has a crazy downturn. Like, this isn't 2008. It's not 2009 anymore. I will say it is easier to get mortgages now than what it was back in 2013, and I have seen that happen, but we're nowhere near what that was. right? We can't even build houses fast enough right now. Demand is just through the roof, okay? And prices are just going up, and that's just a supply-demand situation. Now, so I get the people who got burned by that, and so they're very fearful of that. But at the end of the day, if you can afford your mortgage and you can take those extra funds to put into something that can return you more capital, just from a pure math perspective, that makes more sense. Now, I'm not telling you anything that I don't do, okay? The current house I live in fact, every house I've ever bought, what I've done is I've only put 5% down. Now, it's worked out for me really well. There's other things that go into. I know you're probably thinking, oh, but then you have to pay PMI, and you're right. I had to pay PMI for 1 year, right? So I had to pay about, I think it was $97, maybe $120 a month extra for 1 year. Okay, so essentially call it $1,200 I had to pay for 1 year for PMI. And then my house went up in so much value that I had it reassessed, and the equity I had in that house because of the value went up allowed me to get rid of PMI. Now, this was all a calculated, plan that I had done ahead of time. In fact, my neighbor did the exact same thing, but it came with intentionality. And the whole point was to put as little down to leverage the loan and get the most out of it. And meanwhile, the other 15%, right, for a total 20% that most people would have put down, I had in the stock market working for me. And, funny story, this was actually in this house. I bought this in 2014, 2015 maybe. It's a new build, so I'm the only person who's ever lived in it. But when I bought this, I did the 5%, and I took all the other cash that I had to have just for the lender and all that. I put it into Amazon, and I recently sold Amazon for well over multiple six figures return. So think about that. That's the difference. I made hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars being able to take that extra 15%, throw it into Amazon over the course of this time period. Now, since then, I've gotten rid of everything in Amazon. Everything's in Tesla now, as you all know from my regular channel. But this is my point, okay? Tying up money into a house doesn't make a whole lot of sense on paper. So the way I'd like to end this is with kind of a asterisk, cautionary trump card to everything I just said. Something that will make every single thing I say render useless and pointless and just completely wrong. So what is that? Well, it's you. At the end of the day, it's you. It's your stress. It's your anxiety. It's that feeling you have in your stomach. Can you sleep at night? If any of these things bother you, then that is what you need to listen to. All right? At the end of the day, if it makes you feel more comfortable putting 20% down on your house so you have a lower mortgage payment, that's what you should do. Okay? That's the right answer, because your health comes first. And don't be fooled. The stress and anxiety that comes from money affects your health 100%. I'm very big into health and fitness, but it's not just about the exterior. It's also about what's up here. It's about what's in here. And at the end of the day, that stress and that anxiety can weigh and pull on you, and it can affect your emotion. It can affect your behavior, which can affect how you treat others, your family, your kids, your boss, your colleagues, right? Your spouse. It goes, it snowballs. It's a ripple effect. So make sure that whatever you do, it keeps you calm. Now, I'm not saying that you should never take risk, because I think risks are a big part of gaining wealth and making decisions, because nothing is without risk, but it's got to be calculated. And you have to feel comfortable enough with the research and the due diligence you have put into whatever risk you're going to put out there to know that, yes, this may make me feel a little nervous, but it's not a nervousness or anxiousness that's going to overcome and consume me in a negative way. So always make sure that you check back in with yourself, because once you've checked in with yourself, then you know where you are holistically. So again, I know this kind of took a little bit of a turn, talking about debt, talking about you and your own health and your anxiety, but they're all interconnected. Okay, don't be fooled. A lot of people get very emotional when it comes to finances. In reality, we need to figure out a way to strip away the emotions from the logic of what we're doing. And, that's almost impossible to do. There's always a little bit of an overlap. I've been doing this for a long time. There's still an overlap, but you need to try to do it as much as you can. And until you get to that point, you have to make sure you take care of yourself. All right, we're going to leave it there. I hope this second episode of Investing Against the Grain 101 resonated with you. I hope it's something that maybe you took some nuggets away from it. Again, do your own research, do your own homework. Don't be a sheep. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to others. Take what we say, put it into your own mind, distill it, and come out with your own thoughts and opinions of what makes sense for you. All right, next episode will come out next weekend. We're finally going to talk about setting a budget. Okay, we've talked about tracking your funds, your money, this is what goes in and out. We've talked about your debt. Next stop is to talk about how to set your budget now that we have a kind of base level of where we are. So we're going to leave it there. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. I love you all. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Peace.